Tragedy in the Twin Cities. Minneapolis rocked once again after a federal immigration agent shoots and kills a protester in her car. Chicago's so-called snap curfew ordinance has new life. Congress digs for answers on President Trump's actions in Venezuela, including a pledge to put proceeds from Venezuelan oil in offshore accounts. And the president threatens to withhold $1 billion in funding for social service programs in Illinois. What will the fallout be?
Welcome to the Chicago Report. I'm Paris Schutz. Well, the on-again, off-again idea of a snap curfew for Chicago is on again. Today, City Council's Public Safety Committee passed a revised ordinance that would give the police superintendent the power to declare a curfew at any place in the city at any time. But the superintendent has to consult with the mayor's office and give 12 hours notice. Mayor Johnson says he's still not sure why this ordinance is necessary.
There's a 10 p.m. curfew that has been on the books for some time. I've never been opposed to that. Now, let me be absolutely clear. What I'm opposed to is giving unilateral control to one entity of government to make a determination in a snap notice that could be a violation to people's civil rights.
Now, the mayor is also noting historic drops in murders and violent crime in Chicago, but proponents of the curfew say it'll give police another tool to combat these gatherings that too often turn violent.
I did put specific language in this ordinance that the superintendent must consult with the deputy mayor for public safety to make this controversial decision. The superintendent has told me he would do that anyway. He doesn't need me to tell him to do that. He would do that as a matter of course anyway.
If you put a curfew in place, you've got an 18-year-old that works at a retail location. They stayed late because they have to refresh the whole store. They're not leaving until 10:30. They're trying to get back on public transportation just to get back home. They happen to be a person of color, and maybe they're wearing clothes that might look like this and not a suit. Are they getting pulled over or not?
And Alders also debated a companion ordinance that would fine social media companies for failing to remove posts that could incite violence in Chicago, including those teen gatherings. Now, that ordinance was tabled for now, but the curfew moves to the full city council for a vote. The eyes of the nation once again on the Twin Cities in Minnesota. What we know at this point, a federal immigration agent shot and killed a 37-year-old woman who was driving a car apparently protesting an immigration action in a residential neighborhood. Now, the Trump administration and Department of Homeland Security have immediately rendered a verdict declaring the victim a, quote, domestic terrorist and concluding that the shooting was justified self-defense. But cell phone videos appear to refute some of these claims, at least refutes the ability to make any determination right now beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, let's take a look at one of the angles, and we caution this is very disturbing video. No! As you can see, it appeared the driver was initially blocking the road as agents approached her. It then appears that she goes into reverse and then attempts to drive off when the agent steps to the side of the car and fires. Now, Minnesota lawmakers like Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey blame federal agents for the escalation leading to the shooting.
Are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. I want to tell everybody directly, that is
What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV. And today that recklessness cost someone their life.
As we mentioned, though, the Trump administration has already decided upon a narrative and rendered its own conclusion.
They were attempting to push out their vehicle and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle. An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him. We're continuing to gather more information, but this goes to show the assaults that our ICE officers and our law enforcement are under every single day. These vehicle rammings are domestic acts of terrorism. We're working with the Department of Justice to prosecute them as such.
Of course, Chicagoans are familiar with these sorts of controversies. Let's not forget the shooting death of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez in Franklin Park last summer, and then the shooting of protester Marimar Martinez, who you just saw in federal court. She had been driving her vehicle and opposing federal actions in Brighton Park. She was shot at, she was labeled a domestic terrorist and arrested. But the Department of Justice dropped her case because the facts did not support their narrative. Now, today, a group of immigrant rights activists responded to yet another tragedy.
But we cannot afford to be silent. We cannot afford to be lost. So for this moment, if you are like me, if you are heartbroken, if you are furious, if you feel helpless and don't know what to do, I'm telling you, come join us.
And joining us now to dig in more is former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who is also a former federal prosecutor and the head of the Chicago agency that's now known as COPA, that investigates police-involved shootings. Thanks for talking to us again, Mayor Lightfoot. When you see the images on this video and you hear the explanation from the Trump administration, in your head as a prosecutor, did those two things jibe? Oh, I think you're muted, Mayor Lightfoot. And appears the video might have frozen up there. Mayor Lightfoot, are you there?
So with the caveat that a video is just a snapshot in time and doesn't provide us the full context, the reality is that that video is one of the most disturbing things that I've ever seen. As you are probably well aware, police departments across the country, really going back to the 90s and the early 2000s, have prohibited shooting into moving vehicles for the very reasons that you saw. It's a risk, not only to the people in the vehicle, but people who are in the immediate area. And unless the vehicle is being used as a weapon to intentionally cause great bodily harm of an agent, there's simply no justification for it. They obviously had the make, the model, the license plates number, and a description, if not a photograph of the driver. They could have easily done the right thing, gotten an arrest warrant, apprehended the person. But I can't see on that little snippet of video, again, with the caveat, any justification whatsoever for shooting into that vehicle as the individual was trying to flee. The officer who shot looks like he was not in harm's way, but he shot at the vehicle as it fled.
The Trump administration and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem say that officer indeed was in danger, that this was self-defense because the officer was in front of the car, and they claim that that driver was going to run the officer over, and at that point, the automobile can be seen and justified as a deadly weapon.
Well, if you look back over the number of incidents that happened here in Chicago, the homicide in Franklin Park, the shooting of Miss Martinez, a number of other instances where federal immigration agents are caught on film, engaging in excessive force, engaging in indiscriminate deployment of chemical agents. The immediate reflex statement from the Department of Homeland Security is to justify everything that was done. I'll just say it. Kristi Noem is a liar, pure and simple. And there's no possibility any responsible secretary of DHS would make a pronouncement like that, literally, seemingly within minutes of this incident happening. There's been no thorough investigation. All she's getting is the initial reports from the field. Having investigated literally hundreds of police-involved shootings, serious other allegations of police misconduct and excessive force, the facts always evolve. And as a principal, you don't issue a statement on the basis of the early preliminary statements. You let the investigation actually play itself out. You can say a lot of things, but you don't exonerate the agents before you even know what happened. And that's precisely what Kristi Noem has done over and over again, as well as other spokespeople for DHS. It's wrong, and we invariably see, as we did with the killing of the gentleman in Franklin Park earlier in September, the contemporaneous video evidence tells a very different story.
Absolutely. In the case of Silverio Villegas-Gonzalez, that video evidence absolutely tells a different story than the narrative they put on. Then, of course, in Marimar Martinez, we know the truth did not match their narrative because in court they could not prove it. They couldn't prove most of the claims that they made, and most of them fell apart, and they had to drop the case. But at the same time, Mayor, then does that mean that the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, is he jumping the gun here in claiming that it's BS what DHS is saying, and the folks that say, well, this is absolutely murder, are they jumping the gun? Does everybody need to cool off here until we learn more?
Look, I think the reality is we don't know yet until there's a thorough investigation. What we can safely say is the images that are depicted on this videotape are highly disturbing and do not seem that the driver was trying to use her vehicle as a deadly weapon, like what happened, for example, in Charlottesville, where the individual intentionally drove down a busy street with the intent to harm and kill individuals who were peacefully protesting. We're not seeing that from the video images that we see here. But the one thing I would say is I caution folks in Minneapolis, please demonstrate peacefully. We are all in Minneapolis, certainly ground zero, recovering from the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. What we don't want to see is any justification for the Trump administration taking even harsher in law enforcement or military action against the great residents of the city of Minneapolis. People are upset, understandably so. People have a right to peacefully protest, but I'm hoping that they honor their own traditions of peaceful protest and not turning it into something else. Minneapolis needs to stand strong and united, but let's do it peacefully.
And I have to say, you know, on social media, the fact that so many people have gone out and adjudicated this already as if this is open and shut one way or another is absolute lunacy. It's just absolute lunacy. But Secretary Noem did indicate there would be perhaps an FBI investigation. Do you think the district attorney in Minnesota there or the attorney general, would those be appropriate agencies to investigate this?
Yeah, 100%. Look, there's always concurrent jurisdiction in something like this, a serious homicide, and there can be no dispute that this was a homicide. Now, whether or not it was justified, that's what the investigation needs to sort out. But there's no reason why the county prosecutor's office there in Minneapolis or the state attorney general shouldn't initiate an investigation to get to the facts, to get to the bottom of what actually happened, and make a determination as to whether or not this shooting was justified or not. You look at, as I did earlier today, the DHS's own rules warns against shooting into moving vehicles and has for some time. So there is a question that has to be answered. Was this shooting justified? Was it not? The little that we've seen in the video raises serious questions as to whether or not any agent, period, was in harm's way. And particularly when you look at the other agents, the non-shooting agents, they were not moving and conducting themselves in a way that suggested any of them were in harm's way. So there's a real question about the validity of the exoneration that Secretary Noem has already given to those agents on the ground in Minneapolis. But I do think it's important for an investigation to be done. I hope that it's going to be done at the county level and frankly not rely upon the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minneapolis. Given the way the DOJ has been turned into its own private fiefdom by the Trump administration and by President Trump, we need more credible, independent investigation of what happened, and then you follow the facts where they lead you.
All right. Former Mayor Lori Lightfoot, of course, former federal prosecutor and head of the Independent Police Review Agency many years ago back in Chicago. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, Congress has been briefed on the Trump administration's plan on Venezuela after the president vowed now to take proceeds from Venezuelan oil and put them in an offshore account. So many questions here to answer as well. And we're joined by Congressman Mike Quigley, a Democrat from Chicago, a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman Quigley, thanks for talking to us. I know that you probably have a million thoughts on what's going on here in Minnesota, but I do want to ask you about what you have learned from your briefings about Venezuela. Anything, any new insight to give us?
I think you would describe them as a pep rally, describing what took place. I don't know that members of Congress learned much. I'm on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. So for 9 years now, I know what an intelligence briefing should be. It should help you understand what's the basis of knowledge for their actions, how credible is that knowledge, and I haven't gotten anything in that vein. When it came to the boat strikes, there was absolutely no intelligence briefings, and so far we haven't gotten anything. They tell us it's based on intelligence gathering, but they don't do an actual intelligence briefing. This is how gross mistakes are made. We understand when there was the mistakes that were made investigating weapons of mass production, of mass destruction that we talked about with Iraq. That was a gross failure. Here, we're not getting any briefings at all, so it's hard to tell what's fact or fiction.
And the latest here is the president is announcing, basically through social media, that the U.S. will take up to 30 to 50 billion barrels of oil from Venezuela, which has the largest oil reserves in the world. And then the proceeds are going to be not put into the Treasury, but stored offshore and controlled by the president. I don't know what legal precedent there is for this. I can't say that it's completely unconstitutional because I've never heard of a situation like this. But in your eyes, is this a legal operation?
Well, look, the president acted without input from Congress. I think part of Congress inaction in the past toward, reasserting its first Article 1 rights to declare war, part of that's on Congress for the last 30 or 40 years. But it's mainly the fault of this president, who hasn't even informed Congress as he moves forward with these actions. So I think they're unconstitutional. I think they violated international law. What he's doing now, I've never heard of at all. It's hard to imagine that it is legal. I have bigger concerns if that's possible, and they principally focus on what's next, right? There was joy and there was happiness when Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, the Taliban failed. But a wise man told us then, you break it, you own it. And there are going to be a lot of problems there. I'd be happier if there was some sense that it was toward a democratic end. But when the president, speaks out against the Nobel Prize winner, who would likely be a strong candidate to be the next president, I'm not sure what this is for. It's clearly not about drugs. Venezuela is not a big producer. What it does channel goes mostly through Europe. And of course, if he was really focused on drug trafficking, the president wouldn't have pardoned the former Honduran president who was serving 45 years for facilitating that drug trafficking for whatever reasons. Finally, what else comes next? What else comes next in the region? That should, and in the hemisphere, that should concern every American. The president threatening Mexico, the president threatening Cuba, Colombia, and of course, the ever great threat out there, Greenland.
Right. Greenland, as the president's saying, he's prepared to possibly even use force to acquire Greenland. But let me ask you, sacking another country's leader, regime change, or at least a leadership change, there was violence involved, there were injuries, there were deaths. Is this an act of war? And if so, does it violate the War Powers Act? And in that case, will Congress actually assert itself and take a vote?
Yeah, look, this is a violation of all those things. Congress has to reassert its War Powers Authority. There is a vote hopefully coming up soon on this very measure to reassert our war powers. It's a resolution that I'm a co-sponsor of. Will they let this get to the floor? Again, it's probably only going to happen if we do the procedural measure we did recently that would the discharge petition, put these bills on the floor. Are there enough Republicans willing to stand up against the president with the risk of war, again, throughout our hemisphere?
And Congressman Quigley, here on the home front, I know that you've already said now you're going to run for mayor, although you want to get the midterms out of the way first. So as I understand, then you are running in the midterms for your seat, but then you do plan to switch up and run for mayor pretty soon after.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we all face here. As members of Congress, we serve and we operate and run every 2 years. So when someone says, "Are you campaigning?" Look, I get sworn in January and petitions start again in August. So taking us out of that cycle is beside the point. The fact of the matter is we're focused on one primary at a time, but I'm letting the people of Chicago know This is a city in crisis, and I want to help.
A city in crisis and perhaps a hemisphere in turmoil right now, at least the southern part of the Western Hemisphere. Congressman Mike Quigley, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.
And when we come back, will Illinois lose $1 billion in federal funding for child care? That's next. Welcome back. The Trump administration has announced a freeze of $1 billion for child care programs here in Illinois amid the ongoing social service fraud investigations in Minnesota. Now, why does that mean the president is withholding $1 billion here in Illinois and other states? We're joined by Bryn Siebert of SEIU Healthcare Illinois to talk about the hit on social services is going to take. Bryn, thanks for speaking with us. What does $1 billion here mean for child social service programs here in Illinois?
Right. So the $1 billion that we learned this week that the Trump administration intends to freeze for the state of Illinois largely funds the Illinois Child Care Assistance Program. The Illinois Child Care Assistance Program helps more than 100,000 low-income families pay for childcare so that they can go to work. Everyone knows childcare is expensive. Childcare is one of families' top expenses, and the Child Care Assistance Program makes it possible for thousands of parents from all backgrounds all across the state of Illinois to go to work every day so they can provide for their families. So when we talk about the impact of this payment freeze, we're talking about 100,000 parents. We're talking about 152,000 children who receive care through the Child Care Assistance Program. And we're talking about more than 50,000 child care workers, home child care providers and child care center workers who keep kids safe, provide them with a space to learn and grow, and who they themselves are low-wage workers as well.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of the budget standoff under former Governor Bruce Rauner, where there was no budget for 2 years and social service providers just kind of went on without getting paid. Do you envision that's what's going to happen here, that they'll continue to operate in hopes of future payment?
Right. Well, we know that any, cuts or, payment freezes can be devastating to child care providers and devastating to families who need child care. We saw in 2014 under then Governor Bruce Rauner cuts to the Illinois Child Care Assistance Program, and a decade later, our child care infrastructure is still broken. Families are still struggling to find the child care that they need, and child care workers are still earning poverty wages. At this point, we don't know when the impact is going to come for this funding freeze and what exactly it's going to mean for families. But we know that there are, across our state, tens of thousands of families who depend directly on the Child Care Assistance Program. There are also, thousands of employers across the state too who rely on the Child Care Assistance Program to have a workforce who can come to work every day knowing that their children are cared for. So definitely, we're concerned about, what the impact will be on childcare programs and on families who need this care.
And let me ask you then, the justification is what's going on in Minnesota and these multiple investigations of fraud. Do we see that in Illinois? I mean, to my knowledge, I haven't seen multiple investigations. I haven't, there's been reporting over the years about problems in some of the human services programs, but is there a situation in Illinois where there needs to be some kind of investigation into whether fraud is taking place?
No, to put it simply, there is not. The federal government provided no evidence of widespread fraud in Illinois in the child care program. The truth is that Illinois runs a strong child care program with robust oversight, with procedures in place to maintain complete integrity of our child care program, to ensure that it's serving the families that it's supposed to serve. And also, child care providers and child care workers in the Child Care Assistance Program take their responsibility to serve children and families seriously. Again, these are working class people. Child care center workers who are earning on average $16 an hour themselves, family child care providers who are taking home, in many cases, less than $15,000 a year, who are caring for children every day at or near minimum wage so their parents can go to work. So what we're seeing, these payment freezes are a result of, people trying to move a narrative, attacking public services, attacking working class people, attacking immigrant communities. And we're seeing them specifically targeting states who are pushing back against the Trump administration's agenda. But at the end of the day, it's, working people of all backgrounds all across our state who will suffer for this payment freeze to child care services. And
we should note that to this point, Illinois officials have not seen this in writing, that this is going to be held up. It's just been an announcement from the Trump administration, but I have to leave it there. Bryn Siebert, SEIU Healthcare Illinois, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And questions or comments, email us at parisonpolitics@fox.com. We're done for tonight, but we're back tomorrow. We will have Republican Congressman Darren LaHood, among other things, to weigh in on all of these developments that just keep coming at us. Have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow, same time.